You are now listening to the Hot Take Podcast, brought to you by Full Time Fantasy. Here are your hosts, Stephen Taroni and Josh Daly. Time to make it hot.
Welcome in. This is the Hot Take Podcast. My name is Stephen Taroni, and we are back and better than ever. Been a couple week hiatus due to some complications. My co-host Josh Daly is with me as always, and he's been working like a dog. What's going on, Josh?
Yeah, super excited to be here and talking with our guest today. And we, don't have the exposure of, being out in the public. We get to do this in the comfort of our own home, which is different from me being out at work here the past week. So it's a little more relaxing for me today.
Yeah. I don't know. Words like exposure are kind of hit differently these days. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's scary. I don't want to be exposed to anything right now.
It's nice to have to, we can record this and I don't have to wear a mask.
That's true. That's a good call. We got a great show for you today, folks. We are going to get into some of the free agents that we missed a couple weeks ago. Some news has happened since then, and then we're going to have some fun. We're going to play some this or that, and I'm excited to introduce our guest for the day, Joe Pisapia. He is back. My G from another tree. What is going on, Joey P?
I'm going to still wear my mask just to be safe here. I know we're all in completely different states, but I figure, better to be safe than sorry. I'm going to wear my mask. Can you hear me through the mask? Is it okay if I wear the mask during the show? Is it okay?
As long as you don't throw down your mask onto the ground or your gloves. Have you seen people just throwing their gloves and you'll see random gloves places and in grocery store parking lots? It's what's going on, guys? If
no,
you're
that I haven't seen. I haven't seen that. No, you just throw out your gloves. I mean, it's not very hard. I feel like if you watched or are a fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm for the last decade, then you've prepared for this. This whole thing, every neurosis about this that's going on. I feel like if you watch that show and you're a fan of that show, then you know exactly, and you're looking for these things. What are you doing? Pick up the glove. Just throw it in the trash. What's your problem? Just do it. I would think at this point in time that's where we're at. But look, at least we're all safe right now. Hopefully everybody out there is taking the proper precautions and doing what they're supposed to do. And then if everyone does their job, then we get a reward, which is we get our sports back at some point.
Yeah, that includes picking up the gloves, though. I mean, come on, they're not cigarette butts, people.
No, they're not. Right. Just take them off and put them in the trash and walk away. How hard is that?
Exactly. No, I was watching Ozark. I don't know. Are you guys into the Ozark on Netflix?
I haven't started it yet.
Yeah, I haven't started it yet either. It is next on my list. I've heard nothing but great things about Ozark. Literally every person. No, I'm a complete Ozark virgin right now. So I've heard nothing but great things from everybody. So that is next on the list to binge. I just rewatched the Watchmen series again on HBO because it was so damn good. I wanted to watch it knowing what I know now at the end of it again, which is freaking even better the second time. And then I just had to watch the Tiger King thing just so I can be on the internet, because I can't be on the internet without knowing what the hell this Tiger King thing was.
Tiger King is captivating content, man. That stuff is these docuseries on Netflix, I think it really started with Making a Murderer, where every 10 minutes in the show, you're just no way. And that's one of them.
Yeah, it's a good one. It did not disappoint. And I loved every time there was a musical interlude with one of the music videos that just took it to the next level. Cause it felt like you were watching one of those Christopher Guest Waiting for Guffman kind of movies where you thought this was an improv troupe. At some point I'm doing this story. That's really what it felt like. But it wasn't. It's there. It's crazy. It's terrific. It's everything you want it to be. I'll tell you what else is good too. And if you have nothing else to watch now, is that McMillions one on HBO, which is about the people who scammed the McDonald's Monopoly game. Oh my God. That is tremendous, man. That is 6 parts, 6 hours of absolute WTF every time a show ends. You're like, well, how can that be? And then you got to go on to the next thing. It's got less murder than Tiger King, and less people losing limbs and less music videos, but it's still highly entertaining.
Oh man, the music videos in Tiger, Tiger King had the best music videos. I'm telling you, Joe Exotic. Can we get him out of jail? Come on.
That was another one of my deep thoughts this week too. Because then I forgot about that one when I found out, I just watched Tiger King and I realized I'm not nearly as exotic of a Joe as I thought I was.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, hey, spoiler alert, guys, because at the end, hey, we are going to talk football today. That's actually what this show is. If you're any new listeners that is like, what are we just talking about Netflix shows? At the end, we're going to have a nice deep thought from Joey P, and a Joey P exclusive on the Hot Take. Deep Thought's been a nice little series. I think it's given people some laughter in this try time. So, hey, we appreciate you, Joe.
Well, I appreciate being able to pass some time talking sports. I mean, at this point, I think it's the best thing I think any of us could be doing for ourselves and for the masses too. And, people were saying, well, how are you doing baseball shows now? I'm like, dude, I got nothing but baseball content we could do on the show for the next 3 months of stuff. So, it's, being able to talk about sports is one of the things I think is keeping a lot of us sane here. So I think it's a blessing for all of us who get to talk it, and a blessing for those who get to listen to podcasts like this.
Yeah. Amen, brother.
Yeah, amen. Amen. And really, we're people that can write podcasts, do all this stuff. I mean, we really, have not an advantage, but we're thriving right now in this time that we can be at home like we usually are and do this and create. And, I think that you're seeing a lot of creatives in different avenues just come out in this time, which is one of the, surprises of this virus that I didn't see, is that people are really coming out and kind of tapping into what they really are when, they don't have to go to work for 8 hours a day. It's pretty wild how that happens. But we're going to talk some football today. We're going to talk some Cam Newton. We got to figure out where Cam's going because we know the Panthers let him go. But before we get into that, I want to talk about Jonathan Bales. All right. So Jonathan Bales on Twitter. He was a co-creator of Fantasy Labs, one of the better younger minds in the fantasy industry. Obviously does a lot with betting, things like that. So one of the things that popped up was this push-up challenge. I guess this guy works out a lot. Obviously he does, because he did 2,400 push-ups in 12 hours. Apparently there was over $1 million in bets, guys, for this to see if he could or could not do it. 2,400 push-ups in 12 hours. So, of course, the question on everyone's minds, Josh Daly, what can you do in 12 hours that you think most people wouldn't be able to pull off?
Well, I thought about this question when I saw it pop up. And first, just let me say, anyone that took the under on Bales, why would you ever underestimate this man? Shame on you.
Right.
But second, I thought about this. And I was going to go with, unfortunately, I couldn't bet on the Bales things. Sports betting's just made recently legal here. Another thing that's also been recently made legal has been marijuana. And I thought about how many THC gummies I could possibly ingest in a 12-hour period. But now I'm starting to walk myself back off that, because I know that there's dudes out there that can just eat half a can of these for breakfast, because they've probably been doing it a lot longer, probably some people out in Denver or Cali or, Washington, something like that, where it's been legal for a little bit longer.
Sure.
Probably a little bit more of a tolerance than me, but I don't know what that says to my character, if that's kind of the first thing I thought of. But hey, I'm not afraid to go for it at some point.
It seems like somebody I want to hang out with. That's what it seems like. Well, I have a question about this whole thing. Did he see any money out of this?
I don't know. I imagine he did, but maybe he's donating it. I'm really not sure.
All right, if he's donating it, awesome. First of all, if that's what it was, and this was sanctioned by something or someone, and he won this bet, then good for him. If this is just shameless promotion of look how many push-ups I can do, bad job by you. That's just come on.
Right.
Who cares?
Yeah, he absolutely had. He bet quite a bit on himself, from what I understand.
Well, that's but my question is, how is he collecting all these? That's what I want to know.
I don't know if this is a real number, but from what I saw before it all started, is by the time the morning rolled around, and Adam Levitan was walking over to his house there. There was over $1 million on this, is what I was told. So if that's accurate, I mean, good for them for getting this much publicity. But yeah, there's no doubt that he profited off of this. But I feel like him and the guys at Labs or the Action Network should probably kick Draft Cheat some money, because Draft Cheat was kind of like the hype man for this whole thing.
Right.
And it's just crazy because CSU Ram, shout out to Peter Jennings and those guys. They're all doing great content and stuff. But it was, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure it started with like a bet between CSU Ram and Draft Cheat. So and then like he ends up not having to do any push-ups, and that he bet on Bales. So like he ends up just running so pure like all the time. It's ridiculous.
Right. Now, I didn't say that we were going to dispute this or say if you could or could not do this, but I think I'm just going to like throw that into the mix. And I'm saying I don't know if you could do this, Josh. Like 12 hours of eating edibles, I think by hour 5 you would puke. And I don't see any other outcome than not puking in that. So I don't know if it's possible, bro.
I feel like the puke, though, would just be from eating too many snacks that like I normally wouldn't be eating as part of my regular diet. I don't think it would really be anything like cerebral that would make me puke.
Sure.
I think it would just be my stomach would basically fall victim at some point.
All right, well, Joey P., the world's wanting to know, what can you do in 12 hours that other people can't?
Well, if there's $1 million on the board, I can do a lot. I can tell you right now. like, if you want to put your money where your mouth is there, I'll take a lot of challenges. But
Sure.
I'm sure I could. I wonder if I could podcast for 12 straight hours. I mean, I wonder if I could do that. If I could host a radio show for 12 hours and what it would sound like by the time we clicked over into hour 6 or 7. Because the longest, I think I've done 5 hours straight. Like when we did NFBC, we did it on air for like 5 hours in a row and stuff like that as a group of people. They were interchanging people, but I was there for pretty much all of it. So I could do that. Like that's that 5-6 hours is like nothing. So it's really only like double that. And I think I could do it. Like I feel like I can. I think so. If there's money to be had there, I could do a 12 hours worth of podcast there, and then just and be good. Could cover enough things. We do movies and music and wrestling and sports. I think I'd be fine.
Yeah, no. If there's one thing I know you can do, Joe,
I could talk all day. I'm an Italian from Brooklyn. If I can't talk all day, then all hope is lost.
So Sal Leto did the 12-hour pod recently. He did 12 hours straight where he hosted and had different guests on for fantasy football. He would be the perfect person to ask. Now they also, of course, in the summertime for the Scott Fishbowl Podathon, they do 24 hours straight. I think that you would have to. I think you got to double down, man. I think you got to do like 48 hours straight if you're gonna like beat those guys.
You got to sleep, and eventually your voice physically gives out too. So 12 when they do 24 hours straight. What do you mean they're not doing? They're not. Somebody's going to sleep there. They're not up for.
They had 3 guys, right?
Yeah, so somebody's going to sleep. That's wuss stuff. No, I'm talking like you, one person, 12 hours, just talking. I might even interview myself at some point.
I'm going to take myself out of the running to produce and edit that one. I'm going to let someone else produce and edit that. But hey, if you need a guest, more than happy to hop on.
Just live stream it. Who cares?
Right.
No edits.
So my thing is, I was actually going to. My answer originally was going to be like, well, I could do 2,500 push-ups in 12 hours to one up Bales, but yeah, I could do that. By the way, just let the record show. But my answer is actually eating chicken wings. I think I could eat more chicken wings than I would finish in the 90th percentile of eating chicken wings in 12 hours. I don't know about the most.
What would help like that? That handful of gummies. That would help.
Yeah, really.
Yes.
But when I eat wings, I don't get full. I don't know if this happens to you guys. It's like crabs for me. I don't know if you guys have ever just sat down to some crabs. I'm from Maryland, so I do it often. But I could eat crabs for days, and I feel the same way when I eat chicken wings. I'm just wing after wing. I'm never full. When you go to a restaurant and you get, whatever it is, it's like $10 for a pound of wings, whatever it is. It's never enough. So wings for me would be my thing.
I like it. I know what you're talking about because when I used to like be new to sushi, I remember, oh man, like I can't, like this is expensive. I can't get full off of this. But like nowadays, if I go to crush some sushi, I mean, I'm tapping out after about 15 minutes.
Right. Well, that's the rice too, you know? I mean, I'm not sure if do you eat with like the rolls or do you eat just like straight sushi?
Oh yeah, I mean usually rolls, so I'm definitely getting some rice in there. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like being able to eat, you don't feel full. But hey, that's changed over the course. As I get older, my metabolism is slowing down a little bit.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Father time rests for no man when it comes to the metabolism. Joe, do you think there's anything that you could eat in 12 hours?
Yeah, sure.
Would you thrive in eating competitions?
Yeah, I would. It's funny. I don't think that I would like. I don't know. I mean, I'm not one of these people nowadays, too. Especially like in my youth, I could definitely hold up. But now, once you cross over 40, like you just no, you probably not as much. But chocolate chip cookies would definitely be my vice. Like I could definitely go the cookie route for sure. But yeah, it's funny. Like all that eating competition now stuff. It's like most of that stuff just grosses me out. I'm just kind of like, oh no. Yeah. Even the hot dog guys, I'm like, no, I can't watch that stuff.
No, the hot dog. Dipping the bread in the water is. I can't do that. I would never be able to do just that.
That's so nasty.
It's kind of nasty. No one wants soggy buns. Nobody.
That's what I was told.
All right, let's get into some football talk here, guys. This is what you came for. We got to start with Cam Newton because, look, I mean, you got to love the videos that he posted, black and white, shirt off, working out. He's ready. Cam Newton, I believe he's 31 years old. Look, the fact that nobody's taking a chance on him is very peculiar. I have to say, because you got guys like Nick Foles and, even let's say Mitch Trubisky just sticking with the Bears that are getting chances. And Cam Newton, I would say undoubtedly is better than those two. I mean, just that alone right there. So let's talk about Cam Newton. Let's talk about what makes sense for him. And do you guys think that he'll be a starter in 2020? And let's say both for the beginning of the season, then maybe he just usurps somebody at some point. So, Joe, let's start with you. What are you thinking for the outlook of Cam Newton in 2020?
Well, there's not a lot of spots, and that's the thing. It's like this musical chairs thing we talked about on Black Book Pod too. About there's just not a lot of spots where teams are in a situation where they'd be looking to add a guy like Cam Newton. And part of the reason why teams are skeptical and why he hasn't ended up somewhere already is number one, the injuries. The Liz Frank injury is a serious one. So is shoulder injuries. And on top of it, it's the Cam Newton show that comes along with it, man. I mean, he is, the press conferences and the nonsense and he's morose when he wins. I mean, it's just miserable. I mean, I as a fan of if any of my teams, like, if I was I'm a Patriots fan. If they signed him, I'd be pissed off. Like, I don't want him. I don't want Cam Newton on my team. That being said, I think there's a team that's desperate. I think there's a team where there's an opening at quarterback and a team where I think he would fit pretty well because it's already a giant cluster and it's all basically going to get lit on fire anyway. And it's Jacksonville. And I think Jacksonville's the one spot where, Foles isn't there. I don't think they're sold on Minshew 100% yet. And I think that it makes sense there to bring in Cam Newton, see what he does on a 1-year show me deal. And you have some pieces there at Fournette and DJ Shark where all of a sudden you could actually be competitive with Cam Newton. So for me, that is pretty much the only spot in my mind that makes sense, both from a financial standpoint, from a football standpoint, that you would want Cam Newton to go and that Cam Newton would fit.
Yeah, I love that call. And I like that you're thinking out of the box there because I think people are looking at Jacksonville like they're locked up there at the quarterback position, but you have a point.
No way. There's no way they look at Minshew and go, yep, that's the guy we always thought was going to lead our team. Because if that was the case, they wouldn't have paid Nick Foles that god-awful amount of money to come there in the first place if they thought that much of him. And Minshew, look, he was fun. I like Minshew. He's got good energy. But, I mean, he's not Winston. He's not Cam Newton. And those two guys are out there still. One of them is going to end up there, and I think Cam makes a lot of sense.
I'm into that. I'm into that for sure. Josh, what makes sense to you? Are you back in that Jacksonville call? Because I really like that. I think that look, we talk about all the time here. The running quarterback thrives with, a great running back or better than average running back and vice versa. So both of those players, Leonard Fournette and Cam Newton, would really be, exciting for fantasy. So what are you thinking there?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, Joe kind of opened it up with like the best statement. Like, there's not that many landing spots for Cam. So when you kind of look at the grand scheme of things, absolutely love the Jacksonville call. And Joe, man, you should throw down some money on that, because I saw even 2 days ago where you can get Jacksonville as the landing spot at like plus 5,000 in some places. So
what?
I mean,
Send me that link right after the show. I'm on that.
I can't bet here in Michigan online yet. All the sports books, every sports book closed 3 days after it opened here in Michigan. So during the middle of the week's not the ideal time. And anyway, as far as the landing spots for Cam, I know that Foles went to Chicago, so that kind of takes them out of the running. But can't we just see this scenario where the Patriots go through and everyone starts second guessing Bill Belichick after the draft? And why didn't the Patriots draft a quarterback? And the next thing you know, he's signing Cam Newton for peanuts. And the reason I think that the Patriots make a ton of sense is because Bill Belichick has been known for, reclamation projects. And he's been known to just get the most out of every player. I mean, you look at the defensive side of the ball, and you saw Kyle Van Noy, former Lion, who they got for a 6th-round pick, and Jamie Collins, who they signed for like free agent minimum last year. And those guys go off and get like an $80 million combined in contracts. And as we see this recur every year, it wouldn't surprise me in the least to see them sign him for just an absolutely cheap deal. And the other reason I think it makes a ton of sense is because this offense doesn't have a ton of weapons like we're used to seeing back in like Tom Brady's heyday. I mean, there is no more Gronk. Edelman is in his later stages of his career. And who knows who's going to be carrying the rock for the Patriots. I mean, Sony Michel's still young, but I mean, the guy is like, same with Todd Gurley. Like these arthritic knees. Who knows if they're going to hold up? But what have we seen with Cam Newton everywhere he's gone? In college and in the pros. I mean, he has been the Panthers' entire offense until just recently when Christian McCaffrey burst onto the scene. Right. So
yep.
I could
the only
absolutely
trouble with that is
see that.
I just don't see that they have the cap room to make that work. It would have to be peanuts. Like, it would have to end up being something like that. But do you really think that Belichick would be able to deal with the Cam Newton attitude? I mean, because that is a significant one.
I think the Patriots are more likely to sign Winston than Newton.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Winston makes more sense because they look at him. I think Winston tries really hard. And who knows? Yeah. Maybe it was just the vision. Maybe he fixed his eyes and maybe everything is okay. I don't know. Probably not. But if you're going to roll the dice, I'd roll the dice with Winston, who was, who I think just even last year you looked at and say, he's healthy. He can throw the football. It's just a matter of his decision-making process. If you can get him into this spot where you can, temper down the risks he takes as opposed to like just letting the ball fly everywhere, then I think you might be in a better scenario.
Well, I think Belichick would welcome that project too. Like, I thought that was going to happen with Bruce Arians. Like, okay, maybe Arians can ground him out, and Arians really isn't the guy to do that. And like, hindsight is 420 here, and I just think that Arians coming in with that gunslinger style offense, just that doesn't work for Jameis Winston. Of course, it worked because for fantasy because he's threw for 5,000 yards, but maybe Belichick is the guy that can do it. I think that the Bengals, obviously they have the first pick. So look, if they're getting rid of Andy Dalton, they draft Burrow with the first pick, and then you bring in a Cam Newton and let Burrow sit for a year. Not likely. I really see the Bengals drafting Burrow and having him be the day one starter, but I'm throwing out the Bengals as a possibility. You see Cam Newton in that offense. You have A.J. Green. You have John Ross. You have Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon. So all of a sudden you add Cam Newton on the 1-year prove-it deal, and as long as they can bolster that line just a little bit, that could be successful. That really could be, a successful situation for Cam Newton. Also, kind of an outlier here, the Jets. Not likely. To me, the Redskins and the Dolphins kind of make the most sense. Yeah, I think that Miami, again, is going to draft a quarterback with 5. But, again, you don't have to play him right away. They draft Tua. Makes a lot of sense to sit him for a year. And instead of backing up Ryan Fitzpatrick, it makes a lot more sense for him to back up Cam Newton, who, that would be, to me, that makes too much sense for the Dolphins. So it's not going to happen. They're just not that franchise that does moves like that. But now the Redskins could do something like that. I'm not trying to give credit to the franchise at all. But again, you have Haskins there. Obviously not ready. He's not ready. And he was forced into a situation. He had a lot of bad games because of it. There was some moments, a flash in the pan, but it would really benefit him to just back up a veteran quarterback, as erratic as Cam Newton can be. I think that he's a professional football player. This guy is the quintessential football player. He studies the game. He really does. He's a smart player. And he's just a physical, phenomenon. So I think that'd be a good area for that franchise.
Yeah, we're only like 3 years away from him, being removed as the MVP, and
right.
It's never been a question of the talent with Cam. It's always, and that's the only thing that I didn't get to, and honestly, we don't need to expound on it at this point. But the extra things that come along with having Cam Newton as a member of your football team, and for that reason, I just reuniting with Ron Rivera, someone who's used to him.
But you know what? Ron had a shot at him already, and passing on for Kyle Allen. He had a shot to get one of his quarterbacks, and he took Kyle Allen. He could have had Cam Newton.
Right.
So now he's there too.
And to me, and that's a great point, Joe. And to me, that kind of does rule out the Redskins.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's why, it should have been, and it probably makes a lot of sense, and it probably would be a good fit too, because I do think that East is way more wide open than people realize in the NFC. But I don't know, that they've got the cap, they've got all this. I think what Ron Rivera wants to do is basically pick his own guy. And I think that, Kyle Allen's familiar with the systems. So that's why you bring in Kyle Allen as a backup, because you can always pivot to him. But you go and you see what you have in Haskins, and then next year you go draft a quarterback, or they want to, suck bad enough to go get Trevor Lawrence next year, something like that. I think I think that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for a 1-year fix, because I think they're still behind the Dallas Cowboys and the Eagles significantly, and they're probably still behind the Giants significantly to a certain amount. Although if they had Cam Newton, I think it would make them automatically relevant. I just don't think that they see this as a 1-year fix with Cam Newton, so they'd rather not do that. But it's, he's going to end up somewhere. I don't think he's not going to play, but I think Jacksonville, he can go be whoever he wants to be. And it's right there, open for business. They have the cap room, they have the space, they've made some moves, and they can basically remake themselves and, try to make some noise in that division right away.
Someone who I think Gardner Minshew learned the rah-rah mentality from was Phillip Rivers. I feel like he invented that mentality. Who, look, at this point, it was ugly at times last year, guys, for Rivers, as far as a talent, arm talent quarterback. It's just not there. I will be surprised, if we ever see that, that deep ball from Rivers like we did in his heyday at all this year. But the Colts brought him in. They paid him significantly well. And you have talent around him. I'm very interested in Marlon Mack, still. I'm very interested in Nyheim Hines because he is the pass-catching back. I think that I'm not the only one who sees that in Nyheim Hines. And I think that, after a couple preseason games and I think that Hines' value could rise a little bit, where Marlon Mack is still the back that you want, obviously. So I think that's just one point to make with the running backs. But Jack Doyle is a guy that everyone's talked about as look, Eric Ebron's gone, and we're going to get Eric Ebron a little bit later. So Jack Doyle could walk into a lot of targets right now. Josh, are you buying that? Are you buying Jack Doyle as just a tight end to target in redraft?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would rather own Jack Doyle without Eric Ebron than Eric Ebron in Pittsburgh, for example. And I mean, there's been historical, splits that just show the difference when those two, or the past couple seasons, even though they were on the same team, when Ebron missed time and Doyle would miss time, I mean, the other would just benefit exponentially. But it was more so way in favor of Jack Doyle in those scenarios where Doyle was seeing just an absolute ton of targets. And I mean, if you look back historically, for the same reasons that you like Hines, Rivers loves to target the running backs and the tight ends. I mean, him and Antonio Gates. I mean, Antonio Gates is going to be arguably a first ballot Hall of Famer, and that was all from Phillip Rivers. And I mean, we've seen how good Hunter Henry's been when he's been able to stay on the field. So as long as Doyle can do the same thing, stay healthy, I don't see any reason why people shouldn't have him, higher, or the stock arrow shouldn't be pointing up on Jack Doyle at this point. I mean, it's just really hard to argue against that.
Yeah, I love Rivers going over there. I mean, talk about one of the big winners this offseason is Phillip Rivers going from one of the worst O-lines to one of the best O-lines in football. So just the fact that he's going to have more time to throw the football is terrific. I think everybody should move T.Y. Hilton up their boards. I think that's the one guy that's kind of getting lost in the shuffle of all this because, last year was not a great year for T.Y. Hilton. There were some injuries, but also they weren't an offense that was going to throw the ball. They were going to be a very, very efficient reserve offense. Now it's going to be very different. It's going to look a lot more like Andrew Luck throwing the football. And I think that is huge for T.Y. Hilton's. I think it puts him right back into that strong high-end number 2 wide receiver type ground potentially. And Jack Doyle, tight end 1, still a lower end tight end 1, I think still. I mean, he's not Antonio Gates. Let's not confuse him there. From a PPR standpoint, I like him. Ebron being gone is positive because this is one of those addition by subtraction situations because the 2 tight ends made it money last year. Now you having the 1, it's clearly a little easier, but really putting Rivers behind that kind of O-line, giving him a fresh start here, I think is exactly what they need. Plus, let's also not forget, he's very familiar with these guys. He played with Frank Reich when Reich was an OC over still the San Diego Chargers, and he's familiar with the OC there too. So there's familiarity in the language, which is a huge thing. When a guy goes into a new system, that's not really a new system for him. That is some place where a guy can make a move and be successful right away. So I really like this move for Rivers, and I think you can knock everybody up a peg here.
Yeah, I definitely, I wrote on the show sheet that, Jack Doyle rising, not so much for T.Y. So I think I'm, going the other way with T.Y. Yeah, I do think he's a wide receiver too. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, he's going to finish as a top 24 wide receiver. But I think the big thing for me that I need to see is, can Phillip Rivers get the ball down the field? And obviously we know that Hilton thrives as a downfield runner, deep threat. Now, can he be a possession guy too? Is he that receiver? Yeah, he is. I think that he can be that guy. And, look, if he gets fed targets like we've seen Rivers pepper Keenan Allen with targets, oh man, you're looking at a potential top 12 guy in that case, because I'm not, undermining the talent of T.Y., but I don't know if he can really thrive in the deep game like he has in the past with an Andrew Luck and even a Jacoby Brissett who can get the ball down the field. Now, look, maybe I'm underestimating what Phillip Rivers can do at this point in his career, but I just don't think that he really can consistently drive the ball down the field. Paris Campbell's a name to know.
Wait, you don't think that Rivers can drive the ball down the field anymore?
Not like he used to, no, and not consistent.
Well, I'll take this. I'll take the bet on the other side of that because I think last year was a matter of having the time to get the ball down the field. He wasn't there. If you go back and you watch film of Phillip Rivers, it wasn't a matter of arm strength anymore. What the problem with him is he just couldn't frickin', he had no time. I mean, that's why Austin Eckler caught so many damn balls, is because constantly people were just in the backfield, and next thing you know, he's just tossing the ball off. So I think the arm strength's still there. I just think the opportunity wasn't there, unfortunately. But T.Y. right now is going after like the DJ Sharks, and he's in that DK Metcalf universe of wide receivers. So DJ, T.Y., or DK, one of those guys has a lot of track record, and his name is T.Y. Hilton. So that if you're going to put your money somewhere, depending on your roster construction, I think Hilton's the guy to put your money on.
Most definitely. He should be a great value in drafts. I don't think that that the name – is there, but it's not, like an Odell Beckham. And, while Odell Beckham had a down year, he still has the name. So I think at a certain point that's going to level out. Odell Beckham you have to pay for him. T.Y. Hilton, who has finished around, Odell Beckham before when he had Andrew Luck, so he has that kind of talent. You're not going to have to pay that much for him. So you're saying he's around DK Metcalf and guys like that. It's like, look, T.Y. Hilton's been there before. Another name to throw out, Mo Alley Cox. Huge tight end who obviously, look, the Colts like to run 2 tight end sets. That's what they do. That's what they've done for years now, going back to Andrew Luck's rookie year. And look, when Eric Ebron was down, we saw Mo Alley Cox get a little bit more uptick, jumping up to 55% snap count compared to a typical, 20%, 30%. They like him to block because, like I said, he is gigantic. But he looks to be the second tight end right now. And I think that's just somebody to throw at the end of a best ball draft, because Phillip Rivers does love the tight end position. He loves the big wide receiver and the big tight end. That's who he looks for, especially in the red zone. And if Mo Alley Cox can carve out a role, we see it a lot with tight ends. They don't pan out in their first few years in the league. It happens all the time. Look at Delaney Walker, guys like that. So Mo Alley Cox could be that guy. He just has the physical tools, and he's in a good situation, I think. Nobody you're going to draft in redraft, but he could be like a waiver wire guy on a streaming situation if the matchup is right.
Jordan, let me ask you this, just from a dynasty perspective, because I personally feel like having Mo Alley Cox as a dynasty stat kind of like more valuable this year, in my opinion, than taking a shot on this like underwhelming tight end class. Do you kind of feel the same way?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, because at least he has the years. Because when you draft a tight end in Dynasty, you have to understand that you could be waiting for a while. And if you're impatient like me, you're going to drop that guy probably before he even, starts to be good. Like, if you kind of like Darren Waller a little bit, like if you drafted Darren Waller and how his outlook looked at first with like the Ravens, and you're just like, what's going on? Maybe you hold on to him. But like, yes, Mo Alley Cox, I would take a shot. I think this is the time to get him on your dynasty roster and just see how this year goes. If they bring back Rivers for a second year, I think it's just a good sign that you have Rivers, the known tight end, targeter, and then you come into this offense that loves to use the tight end. So I think it's a good situation.
Yeah, Felipe Rios, the targeter of the tight end for sure. One quick thing I just wanted to say regarding TY is I feel like the reason that people could be more optimistic is I think the upside is going to be increased. I think the upside's a little more similar to what it was in the Andrew Luck days. He still has to stay healthy though. That's the one thing that's kind of limited him over the years. But otherwise, I'm not moving him up my rankings a ton, but I think that his ceiling is definitely increased quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a good call. I think that I don't know if he would change that drastically from, let's say, Jacoby Brissett to Phillip Rivers for me in my pre-2020 rankings. I don't know if he would change that much. I would have to take a look at that. But he would be, to me, in my head, he's still around wide receiver 15, wide receiver 16, something like that.
Brissett just not taking a lot of deep shots is kind of like my only stipulation to that. So we could see a little uptick in the deep targets.
Yeah, that's interesting perspective. I think both of you are leaning more on like this is good from a deep ball thing, and I'm kind of questioning it. I think once I see it, like there was a time where Eli Manning was on the downhill, and I was like, I'm not touching Eli Manning, and I was ahead of the curve there, where people were like, no, I mean I think he's a good streaming option. You draft him at the end of a redraft, and it was from an arm talent perspective alone. He was just throwing these ducks constantly. I saw a lot of that last year. Joe, it's a great point. He just didn't have the time. So we'll see what happens with Phillip Rivers. Once I see it, and then it's a great point. He's behind one of the best, if not the best offensive line in the NFL. So that could be a determining factor right there. So let's move on. We didn't get around to Gurley to the Falcons on the last episode here. And this is huge, obviously from fantasy. Now, what isn't huge was the output of the running back position from the Falcons last season. Of course, it started at the top with Devonta Freeman. He just couldn't get it going, and then he battled injuries at a 3.6 yards per attempt clip. They brought in Brian Hill, who's an athletic back, but it really didn't work out as well as I thought it would, to be honest. Josh, talk to me here. I think we're thinking of the Falcons as a great situation for the running back, but is it really?
Well, I mean, as far as landing spots, this couldn't have been better for Todd Gurley. I mean, it's a very team friendly contract. So he can get close to kind of what he was going to make with LA, but that base $6 million deal, I mean, that's kind of like a show me, so I mean, if he can show that he doesn't have to worry, they don't have any perspective, we're going to see that his production is going to be enough in that offense as long as he can stay healthy, because those running backs that they had that we talked about on previous episodes, Brian Hill, Kadri Allison, and Ito Smith, I mean, they are what they are. Those guys are complementary backs, and they have a slew of them, so they could definitely divvy up the workload. They're probably going to have to manage his workload similar to what we saw the Rams do last year, and Gurley did a pretty good job staying on the field. So I mean, as long as I feel like I'm saying that with everybody we're talking about, but it is true with everybody. I mean, as long as they can stay healthy, they have a chance to be productive. I don't know how many more years Todd Gurley has left, but as far as 2020 is concerned, I do think he can definitely have some production that we saw from Devontae Freeman. As long as the Falcons can keep him on the field, I think he'll produce.
Do you believe in Todd Gurley, Joey P?
It's tough, man. I want to believe in Todd Gurley. I was all in last year because to me it was all about upside. I mean, if you're going to get a guy at the end of the first round or somewhere in the second, or God knows, even late second, potentially in some drafts, where the upside is the best running back in football, I think you take that chance. Now, the good news is that he did score a ton of touchdowns last year. The good news is that he did land in a very good offense. Now, it's also an offense that likes to throw the ball to running back. Devontae Freeman a ton of receptions last year. I mean, that was the one saving grace, was in PPR leagues when he wasn't scoring touchdowns. He was catching a ton of balls every week, so he wasn't rushing a whole lot. The yardage totals were showing up because of the amount of receptions he had. So that's a positive. I'm not holding out much hope here for him to become the Todd Gurley we know again. I think that ship has sailed. If it didn't happen last year, then I don't think it's going to. But the good news is I think he is going to be flat year over year. I think you're going to see pretty much the same season you saw out of him last year. I think you're going to see a lot of touchdowns again. And I think that, when all said and done, he's an RB2. He's a high-end RB2, but an RB2 nonetheless. I think I still want the Miles Sanders of the world probably over him. And, I don't know if I'm ready to say Devin Singletary yet, but we can have that conversation as we get closer. The problem is, I mean, it's very difficult. Could he, rebound and have another RB1 season? Of course he can. But the good news is also that it's not going to cost you RB1 draft capital to find that out. I think he is steady in that RB2 category right now. And I think that's probably where you want him. It's probably where he belongs. And when you're talking about the guys that you have to take around him, I think it's commensurate with the guys that are, like I said, Miles Sanders is right there. You're probably in that second tier of wide receivers, the Juju group of wide receivers. It's looking for value and bounce backs. Would you rather have Le'Veon Bell or Todd Gurley? Because that's the answer you're going to have to come up with at some point this year.
Yeah, he's right there. He's 30th and usually averaging about 30th off the board in best balls. And I know once we get some rookie running backs, with some landing spots, that ADP is probably going to go down a little bit. But if you're talking borderline third, fourth round, I mean, as long as that value goes down a little bit, like I anticipate it to, I think it's worth a shot. But yeah, you nailed it, Joe. He's right there, with Juju and those guys, right around pick 30 right now.
Yeah, no, if he goes down from according to Fantasy Football Calculator, and it's very early, and Fantasy Football Calculator, I think, isn't, as updated right now, although they have been constantly updating. I have noticed recently, I mean, he's at the 308 back of the third round. I think, if anything, he's going up once the preseason comes out, once we realize that, the Falcons are obviously going with him. They didn't draft anybody, whatever the case may be. I think he's going to be closer to that, mid-third, let's say closer to the top of the third round. And I'm taking a chance on Todd Gurley at the 308. You make a good point, Joe. Devontae Freeman's receiving game last season was his saving grace, and he was targeted 59 times, which is kind of like a number that we've seen from Gurley in the past with those targets, even more so. Last season,
and that's the thing you didn't see from Gurley last year. You didn't see him catch the football a whole lot, which is weird. To me, that was the way to keep Todd Gurley healthier. To get him out in space and let him just catch the football and go, as opposed to trying to run into people at the line.
Yep, and I'm actually let me correct myself. 71 targets for Devontae Freeman. He had 59 catches.
Yeah,
in limited time. Now, Gurley on the opposite spectrum, like to your point, 50 targets. And I was in the same boat as you, Joe. Like, okay, don't run him up the middle. Give him work in the passing game. Let him work in space. It seems like they did the opposite there. They kind of ran him into the ground. I think they knew that they were letting him go in that way, because they gave him 223 carries, which, yeah, I would have said maybe around there, but still, I think they probably could have limited him to closer to that 200 number. It looks good for me, from all things considered. Going into this Atlanta Falcons offense, I say it's an upgrade at the running back position. Undoubtedly, it's going to make their offense click a little bit more as long as everyone is healthy. You got Calvin Ridley coming into his own a little bit. So it really adds up there. Hayden Hurst coming in. So there's definitely fantasy value to be had. Todd Gurley, to me, as long as they can get him. Now, look, if they give him that 70-some targets that they gave Devontae Freeman, he's going to exceed that value that you're getting him at the draft. I'll tell you that right now. If he can get those kind of targets and he can play around 14 games, then he's going to definitely exceed that value.
Yeah, I would say your expectation for Gurley, if things break right, is you want him to be somewhere over, somewhere in that 1,100 mark in terms of all-purpose yards, 11-12. I think that's realistic, and I think if he can repeat those, at least a dozen touchdowns again, or somewhere in that neighborhood. He had 14 last year. That's terrific. Like, they'll take that in spades. That's probably even a low-end RB1 when all is said and done. But I think he's going to rightfully be in this mix of the Chris Carsons and Le'Veon Bells and all these guys that have issues, whether it be the Jets offense, the questioning, how Le'Veon Bell is going to get used or how he should be being used and not being used properly, or the Chris Carsons of the world who had a very good season but fumbled the ball a lot. Like, it's guys with question marks. And I think you're going to have to figure that out. And at the end of the day, it might be better to just wait and go after a guy like Melvin Gordon or Mark Ingram, maybe a couple picks later. It depends on where you are in the draft, because the Ravens are going to run the football. Like, that ain't changing anytime soon. So, it's all about what your risk adversity is like. And I think depending on who your first running back is, depends on how you want to do this. And I'll tell you what, it's going to be fascinating. We just did the black book drafts for the book. So we were doing, each league we do, in terms of style, PPR, standard, all that stuff we do, like 4 rounds. Nate Hamilton and I kind of go through it team by team and break it down. And in that mock draft, one of the team at the turn took McCaffrey, and then in the top of the 3rd round came back around and took Gurley. And what a incredible thought to tell you, 2 years ago that you could have both those guys potentially on the same roster.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And it's probably going to happen to a fair amount. Like, that's a pretty fair degree of, you can go in that top of the 3rd round. If you want Gurley, he's going to be there. If you want to pair him up with McCaffrey, depending on the format, you just have to figure out if that's a choice you want to make.
Exactly. And, last season for like Scott Fishbowl, that league, I had both McCaffrey and Gurley, and it really worked out. On weeks where Gurley was able to produce, and most weeks he really was, that's a great situation for fantasy football. I mean, how can you go wrong there? And you can also pair them with a stud receiver at the same time. That's just a win-win for fantasy. So let's talk about the Rams' perspective here, because it looks like Darrell Henderson, second-year guy, is going to get his shot. I'm not too concerned about Malcolm Brown right now. The Rams don't look like they're in a position to draft a top running back from this class. So unless they do like a little switcheroo and sign Devontae Freeman, which could happen, Darrell Henderson looks like in a great situation. I mean, he's going to be 23. I don't know if they want to give him the keys to the Cadillac right now, but it's like an opposite sort of situation. I mean, you had the Todd Gurley with the bad knees, and he's obviously wearing down. And now you have this fresh, very touted running back who, I thought was one of the top 3 or 4 running back coming out of last year's class. Darrell Henderson, what do you make of the situation, Joe? Like, do you think he's going to be the starter there?
Well, I mean, this is the difficulty before drafts, trying to figure these things out. So right now he's at like in that right around 100 area in terms of overall value. In terms of RB, he's, in the mid 30s, which I think is proper. I think he's still an RB3 right now. I don't think I'm ready to take him as an RB2 because I don't have clarity yet. But I think we're going to have more clarity post draft. And if they don't go after a running back, I think you'll see him jump up into the end of that RB2 class. Now, the good thing is Henderson's fast. the thing that holds him back is understanding where to run the football. That has been his problem. You go look at the game log, they gave him some opportunities. And, he had opportunities in this season to kind of, I don't want to say run away with the job, but certainly create a timeshare, and he didn't do it. So, yeah, he's going to get more reps. That's a positive. We'll see if they bring in anybody else into this offense. And if they do, that's going to have a significant impact on his value in 2020. I think the long-term value in fantasy leagues of dynasty nature, I think you're looking at a guy who has a ton of upside still, certainly has speed and agility, all the things you look for. It's a little bit more of the understanding of where to run, how to hit the holes properly, and kind of grasping this offense, which I don't think he's quite done yet. And it's not the simplest offense. I mean, McVay is more of a complex offensive mind. So I think you have to take a lot of these things into account right now, because I think when you're talking about him and his value, you have to decide, do I want boring Sony Michel or do I want upside Darrell Henderson? Because I think those are the kind of names you're going to have to bandy about back and forth.
100%. I'm with you there. And, a lot of times as a drafter, I'm definitely leaning that upside, but, it's high risk, high reward, or it just doesn't work out. But everything you're saying, right, he needs to understand the scheme, and it's not one that's easy to pick up with Sean McVay. Now, kind of something that you can compare almost apples to apples is David Montgomery last year coming into Matt Nagy's offense that was asking a lot of everyone involved. And we really saw some growing pains from Montgomery, who, he got a lot of touches. Could McVay try this experiment with Henderson, and could it fail? Yes, 100%. It's not guaranteed that he can pick everything up and be successful. So we saw that kind of with Montgomery. How are you thinking about Henderson, Josh? I mean, are you a big Henderson fan in general?
Last year I was I was on the Malcolm Brown train myself. Of course, both those guys were pretty much worthless, but going into this season, I mean, I'm going to be totally honest with you guys. I'm not really doing any research on the Rams until after the draft, because just where they're selecting, more specifically, I think in that third round selection, I think that they could actually target a running back. I know they have some more pressing needs on defense, but I feel like they can fill those in the first couple rounds, and it would still make a sense to go out and spend some draft capital on a running back. So if they don't go out and do that, I'm definitely going to dig in and I'll have more of an opinion. But for now, I actually have a feeling that the Rams are going to bring in another running back, and this could be a total nightmare of a fantasy committee.
You guys buy them potentially signing Devontae Freeman?
I think it's a distinct possibility. Yeah, I really do. Because I just think that it makes a lot of sense. And I think that's why, for me, I still have him in that RB3 conversation of let's wait and see. It's like that Tevin Coleman, Darrell Henderson, like these guys are just, I don't have any clarity. I'm not sure how it's all going to work out. I think Mostert's that guy now in that backfield. It's the guys that you don't want to leave your fantasy backfield to, the guys that you just want to look at as bonuses. And I think this is the problem a lot of people make mistakes in. They don't make enough of an investment early on, even in PPR leagues, in running back. And then you end up having to have one of these guys hit, and ultimately it becomes a failure.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like the Rams are probably the second, most probable team behind my Lions. And I only say that because the Lions were trying to trade for him in October at the deadline. So there could still be some interest there from Detroit's perspective. I feel like they're probably trying to lowball or something at this point. But I feel like the Rams, it makes a ton of sense for them to offer Freeman to deal with their current running back situation. So either way, if Freeman or a new running back comes in, I feel like they're probably going to have, such a difference in the the division of carries that, it's going to be tricky for everyone from a fantasy standpoint for sure. So it's hard for me to take a stand right now, but I think Freeman could definitely land with the Rams for sure.
I will own 0 Devontae Freeman if he ends up in Detroit. 0.
Yeah, that's the thing, is the fantasy appeal would be much better if he was a Ram than if he was a Lion, because I still believe in carry-on quite a bit, and I know there's a lot of people out there that still do. He's just kind of got to prove it and stay healthy. But yeah, Devontae Freeman wouldn't get very much run at all if he did land in Detroit.
All right, let's talk about Robbie Anderson real quick. Joe, is it a plus in the positive direction for fantasy now that he is in Carolina?
We just talked about this on the show last week too. I think it's a positive for everybody else's value except him. I love this move for the offense, not so much for Robbie Anderson, because Teddy Bridgewater doesn't historically throw a good deep ball. That's typically where he excels, is in that go route kind of situation. But I think it's terrific to get a compliment deep threat that you at least have to take account for, because I am the biggest DJ Moore mark there is. And he was my favorite guys. And the fact that his touchdown total wasn't huge last year, I think it's still keeping other people away, and it shouldn't. And, you talk about what this does for DJ, what this does for McCaffrey, what this does for Bridgewater. I think it's terrific, because adding that other guy that can go deep, and look, there's going to be scenarios where he will hit him, but it's not his strong suit. So I don't think I want to make a ton of investments in Robbie Anderson, but I think as a ripple effect to everybody else on this offense, it's terrific.
I mean, like always with Robbie, he's just a great best ball pick. You get him in best ball, you don't have to worry about it. Starting him on a week-to-week basis is going to be very frustrating. So, you don't want to set yourself up for that. I think he's, depending on where he lands and what's on the board, he can be a nice pick for you. You just can't expect to play him every week. And that's always been the case with Robbie Anderson. Great point, Joe. Yeah, he does a lot for DJ Moore. DJ Moore wants to work underneath. And not only does he have, Curtis Samuel there, who, speculation, they might be done with him at this point if, they brought in Robbie Anderson. I think they should keep him. Not only does he have Samuel, but he has Anderson stretching the field. So that's great for DJ Moore. Love DJ Moore, and I love the point of you need to look at players that don't necessarily hit on touchdowns, because that is always, just value right there. You look at a guy who has a decent season but doesn't hit on touchdowns, you have to expect positive regression. DJ Moore is one of those guys.
Yeah, good point. I mean, it's funny because Joe said, Teddy B doesn't really throw a good deep ball. I mean, if you go back and watch those 2019 games, I mean, they haven't had a deep ball in a while there. So it's it'll be interesting. I believe it or not, I think Teddy ball game is actually a slight upgrade from the Kyle.
I think he's more than a slight. I'll go as far as to say he's a significant upgrade over what they had last year. And if DJ Moore and CMC can be as good as they were last year with Kyle freaking Allen playing quarterback, then, Teddy Bridgewater did a really good job with the Saints. I mean, I understand Michael Thomas might be the best wide receiver on the planet and all, but Teddy B did a good job with that team. And I think that he deserves all the credit there, and he earned a starting spot somewhere, and he got a really good one. So I'm optimistic. Is he going to be like a guy thrown, for 300 yards? No, but I think he's going to throw for more touchdowns. I think he's a smart quarterback. I think he's a likable quarterback too. And for all I can't imagine a more antithetical personality to Cam Newton than Teddy Bridgewater. And I think that's going to be a huge breath of fresh air for this team. And I think Matt Rule is going to be a huge breath air, huge, just a guy that's going to come in there and everybody's going to say, okay, this is a different team with a different look and a different feel. And I think it's going to be one of the more dangerous teams out there. Now in the draft, they got to go address the defense though, because losing Kuechly was a huge loss for that defense. So I know he's been hurt a lot, but they got to figure that out. And I think they will. And I think you'll see them take the best linebacker on the board there with their first pick.
I couldn't agree more. Teddy B is a breath of fresh air for the Carolina Panthers.
And a breast of, we could all use a breast of fresh air.
That's the point you were getting at, right? I'm sorry. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, it's absolutely the words. Well, what don't you want to put in my mouth?
It's a family show. It
is a family show.
Real quick, do you guys think there's any value with, I kind of hit it earlier, like any Ebron value in Pittsburgh? I mean, it's definitely an upgrade over Vance McDonald for sure.
He is, but only in the sense that Vance McDonald is made of glass. I mean, I always feel like it's the same thing with Pittsburgh. It's, that tight end will have a couple games, but it's not something every week in that offense you're gonna love, whether it's Heath Miller or Vance McDonald or whoever it is. It's going to be a wide receiver, throw it down the field kind of offense. And it's going to be either Washington or Deontay Johnson stepping up into that void in that number 2 spot. And with Roethlisberger back, I think they'll bounce back. But Ebron is not, I don't think I think there's just better options now going into the year for tight end than there were on the board last year. And it's just a deeper position all around, which is great because it was terrible going into the year last year. And I think I'd rather have the Jared Cooks of the world than trying to fiddle around with the Eric Ebrons.
What's nice is we've already seen Eric Ebron's ceiling in this situation when he was with Andrew Luck and he was splitting time with Jack Doyle, he's caught a lot of touchdowns. That's the ceiling. Can he catch like 8 or 9 touchdowns? Sure. It's just in fantasy football, you really can't bank on touchdowns all the time. So that's like what we're looking at there. I think it could work out. There's a lot of questions with Roethlisberger. So I think that's the main thing. We need to see it. We need to see Roethlisberger do his thing. And if he can, then everybody's viable. Everybody's viable, including Ebron, who we've seen is a target in the red zone, can be that guy who catches touchdowns, can be a streaming tight end. Let's not get it confused. The tight end position is trash. Jason Witten was a top 12 tight end last year. So in that, if you all things considered, yeah, sure, Eric Ebron. But I think that, with this position, you just look at ceiling. I can kind of compare it to the quarterback. If you're drafting a tight end or a quarterback late, you might as well just look at the ceiling. And yeah, Ebron has that ceiling, especially if Roethlisberger can come back to 75% of what he was.
Yeah, well, I think you're going to see him bounce back in a significant way. So I think that Steeler offense, lives and dies with Big Ben.
Let's move on. This or that used to be in or out. We changed the name, new co-host, new name for a segment, whatever. Variety is the spice of life, I always say. So this or that, with this guy or that guy, Joey P, give me Kenny Golladay or Mike Evans. Both of these guys looks like back at the second round.
Is it in a vacuum, or is there a certain format, or what do you want me to do here?
You're on the clock, PPR, back in the second round. You have
all right, PPR. I'm going to go with Golladay here, actually, because he is the sole guy there, number one, and number two, I think Godwin falls way more into the Tom Brady that I know right now, being a Pats fan, than Mike Evans does. Not that Evans won't be good, but I'll take Golladay in the volume.
Josh. I'll take Kenny G as well. That's that's my guy. I'll just try to give you like real quick, like less than a sentence answers, but that's my guy.
He led the league in touchdowns last year from the wide receiver position with 11. So you're getting the touchdowns with him. Evans obviously can be a touchdown guy, but yeah, I think if you're projecting Matthew Stafford for a full 16, Matthew Stafford had a great year in the games that he played last year. And this Detroit Lions passing game, as long as Stafford is there for 16, and if you're drafting, that's probably what you're projecting. I like Golladay a lot. He's not sharing the load as much, even though we know that Marvin Jones is there. I really do. I would prefer Golladay at this point. I don't think that Tom Brady is helping Godwin or Evans from a fantasy perspective. If it was Winston, I probably would lean Evans, in all honesty. I think that's the difference right there for me.
Minitron, baby. The sax man.
All right, guys, let's stick with the receiver. DJ Chark or Adam Thielen. The Fantasy Football Calculator has DJ Chark at the 402. Adam Thielen without Stephon Diggs now at the 310. Joey P, what say you?
I really like Chark. He runs good routes too. He's very impressive. But right now, until Cam Newton's the quarterback there, I'm going to go with Adam Thielen still. I'll still take my chances with Thielen there. Thielen's a gamer, so give me him, and I'll pay a couple picks extra to get him.
Yeah, same here. We had on the show sheet that we were going to talk about Thielen was a top 12 wide receiver. In short, yeah, I absolutely still think he is, especially with Diggs gone. I mean, they still have to throw the ball at least 50% of the time. So sign me up for Thielen over Chark.
Yeah, I'm with it. 100%. I think that Chark in Chark, let's put him in that situation in Minnesota, and he's the number one like Thielen is. We'd be all over DJ Chark right now. I mean, it would be, but the hype isn't there as much. I think it was a down year for Thielen, obviously because of the injury. So a little bit of a post hype here. I think that people are not going to be as high on Thielen as they would be if he played 16 games. It's just, the nature of it. So we have to look at Thielen as walking into a great situation. Top 12 wide receiver. Oh yeah, it's definitely in the realm of possibilities. Let's stick with that. Cortland Sutton or Adam Thielen. I think this is pretty easy. Joe, what say you?
This is tough. I am a Cortland Sutton guy. I am a very big Cortland Sutton guy, and I love what he did last year. I don't like Drew Lock, but yet it didn't matter who was playing quarterback. He was good last year. So this is tough. Thielen is safer, but if I'm living dangerously, I think Cortland Sutton is that, if I want upside, maybe I think I'd go that route. But right now, again, I think you got to go with Thielen because you know what you've got there. But, man, Cortland Sutton, I think, is that guy. And look, a lot of my receiving cores last year, if I let's say I played in a dozen leagues last year, I would say 9 of them were some combination of Godwin, Kupp, and Cortland Sutton. Like 2 of the 3 of those guys were on every single one.
Right.
So and DJ Moore. So imagine those 4 guys are basically, because that's where the value was. It was in that tier of guys who were ready to come up and be the next thing. And right now they've already arrived, so there's not as many of them. But I think I'll just lean just a hair to Thielen right now.
Yeah, I'd say Thielen like in a PPR, and then Sutton if it's not.
Yeah, I agree, because the touchdown upside you have to expect is with Sutton, because, I mean, we've talked about on this show some of the highlights that Sutton was able to pull off last year, just like in a vacuum, without any context, you're like, man, that is a dominant wide receiver. And he really turned it on and, excelled, elevated in his career. He right now is going to be going at the 302, so you are going to have to pay more for Sutton. So you can kind of definitely factor that in. It's still around the same 310 back of the third round for Thielen. I'll go Thielen. It's definitely safer. Cortland Sutton is the ceiling play. So based on that logic, Joe, you got Sutton ahead of DJ Chark too, correct?
Sutton ahead of Shark for sure. Yeah, definitely. And it's not a knock on DJ. I think he's very talented. I think Shark's terrific, but I think Sutton is just in a better spot right now.
Let's move on to rookies here. Debo or DK Metcalf? Josh, we'll start with you.
This might be a surprise, but I feel like Debo is the alpha receiver in that offense. I mean, I love both offenses, but Debo got a lot of carries in the second half in addition to the targets being increased. And I just feel like overall, he is going to have a bigger piece of that pie for the San Francisco offense than we're going to see DK Metcalf have in Seattle.
Yeah, for me, this is an easy one. It's Debo. I love the Debo. It's not that I think DK is going to be bad. But why does everybody have to have 2 initials right now, too? This is like really between AJ Brown and DK Metcalf and AJ Green and DJ Shark. I mean, literally everybody. I mean, I feel like I need to be just JP from now on, or just, I don't know. But I love Debo. I just think he fits what Shanahan wants to do so well. And I don't love Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback, but I just think that you could see it as the season went on. I overhyped Debo so much going into the year. And then he had a good game, then he got hurt, and then everybody dropped him everywhere, and I picked him up everywhere he was dropped. And you could see at the end of the year him start to get more and more comfortable at the end of that year. So give me Debo. But I totally get why DK is going to catch more touchdowns, probably. But I don't know. I just can't quit Debo Samuel for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think that DK was a all around unanimous first round pick in most rookie drafts going into last season. Debo wasn't really. Now, I drafted him in the back of the first round, and I think that was kind of ahead of the curve as far as, look, I think that he is one of the more talented receivers. Or he can be molded into one of the most talented receivers in the league at this point in his career. And you said it, Joe, this offense just fits him so well. It's really tough to pick DK Metcalf here. Now that I look at it, I thought this would be a lot harder. I think that DK has all of the ceiling in the world. You have the athletic deep ball threat with the best, in my opinion, deep ball thrower as far as accuracy all considered with Russell Wilson. So DK Metcalf is really a candidate, more so than Debo, for more touchdowns for sure. I think that's pretty obvious there. And then we saw DK work in the short game and work in different routes and really, shut up the naysayers that said he can't run routes, he can't, do certain things that a receiver can. So I think we want to give all the credit in the world to DK Metcalf, but Debo Samuel, I think, is a prototypical wide receiver that we're seeing, that new type of wide receiver where, it's not the 6'3", 6'4" guy anymore. That's that prototypical wide receiver one. I mean, it's the DJ Moores of the world. It's that kind of receiver that can work with the NFL style of passing today. Debo Samuel is that. And then you have the Kyle Shanahan offense. Emmanuel Sanders is gone. You're getting great value on Debo Samuel this year, even with all the hype surrounding him. He's going to be an awesome value still in redraft. I think this is going to get harder here with the running backs, guys. Another second-year guy who I'm so excited about, I wanted to talk about him today, was Devin Singletary. He's going at 406 currently. I think that's crazy value for him right there. I don't think that's moving. I think he's going to be that fourth-round pick, and I'm all for it because, like I said, I want that upside. Frank Gore is gone. I don't think they're going to bring in anybody that's going to challenge for too many carries. And then we have Chris Carson, who gets a lot of carries. And he gets a lot of touches, and he is, proven in that way. Of course, he had the fumbling issues, but in a very good offense as far as the running back is concerned. Joey P, Chris Carson or Devin Singletary?
Chris Carson certainly is the guy that's the safer choice, but I'm going to go Devin Singletary here. And this was another guy who was really explosive last year when he was carrying the football. Another guy I was very high on early in the year, had shares everywhere. He got hurt. It was kind of frustrating because he had to kind of slog his way back into playing time there with Frank Gore, but Frank Gore is gone. And I think by the end of the year, you could see they are comfortable with Singletary. This is an organization that is okay with turning the page on guys and moving forward with young talent. They proved it with Josh Allen 2 years ago. They've proven it with Singletary, I think, last year. Adding Diggs into this mix year two, more weapons. It's great. I think Singletary's the guy. So I'm going to go with the upside there because at the end, I don't trust the fumbles and I don't trust Pete Carroll to not replace Chris Carson at some point.
I like it. And then Josh, real quick, which way do you lean here?
I actually think Carson is a little risky. Just the health and the fumbling issues alone are enough to scare the bejesus out of me, and I'd rather go Singletary. Not only do I think there's more upside for Singletary, I just think there's more of a workload threat for Carson as well. Penny could take that job over. Just too much uncertainty for Carson. I think Singletary is actually the safer guy, and I'd go with him for sure.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like that perspective of he's the safer guy. I think that's kind of against the grain there. So I appreciate that. And then, what it always comes down to me too, you got to look at the passing game. That's so huge in PPR. And look, Devin Singletary is the better pass catcher. And they proved to use him in that way a lot of times last year with Josh Allen. So got to love Devin Singletary here, especially you're getting the value. Joe, thanks for coming on the show, my man. It has been a pleasure, like always. I think this is your third or fourth time on the hot take. But the very first in which you will be doing an exclusive deep thought. So tell everybody, please, what you got going on in these times, where they can find your awesome content, and then wrap it up with a deep thought.
Well, you could follow me over on Twitter at Joe Pisapia 17. My show right now is running on Sports Grid, which is Diamond Bets, which you can see on Zumo and Pluto, and also watch it on YouTube. It's Matt Stryker and myself talking baseball. Good times. We got a lot of fun content actually going on right now. You'd think we don't have anything to talk about, but we do. And we're definitely two idiots too. So we have a lot of fun on that program. So you can check that out. Again, it's called Diamond Bets. And of course, check out the Fantasy Black Book podcast, and the Football Black Book will be out June 1st. No matter what, we're going to be out there June 1st, ready to rock this thing. And deep thought of the day is, I heard that Shaquille O'Neal was having some issues with money and Tigers, and it turns out it had nothing to do with LSU. See that? See what I did there? Because in college, he made more money than the pros. I'm out, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, of course, you can catch the hot take wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening. Next week, we're going to have Bob Lung on. It's going to be a special mock draft episode. We're going to have Bob Lung on, the great Bob Lung, talk about consistency. He is Mr. Consistent. On behalf of Josh Gay, my name is Stephen Troney. This has been the Hot Take Podcast.